December 26th, 1925, 3:07 a.m. The Adonis Social Club, 152 20th Street, Brooklyn. Orange light bulbs casting amber glow across 200 people packed onto the dance floor. A mirrored ball spinning overhead, scattering light like broken glass. The jazz combo on stage playing, "Yes Sir, That's My Baby," and nobody knew the music was about to stop forever. Richard Pegleg. Lonergan stumbled through the double doors, wooden leg thumping against hardwood, fresh toothpick dangling from the corner of his mouth. 5 armed Irish white-handers behind him. Aaron Harms, Cornelius Ferry, James Hart, all of them drunk, all of them looking for blood. Al Capone stood near the bar in an impeccable dark suit, watching. 6 years ago, these same men put him on a kill list. 6 years ago, he fled Brooklyn for Chicago to save his life. Tonight, he was back, and he wasn't running anymore. 3 Irish girls walked in with Italian dates. Lonergan's voice cut through the music. "Come back with white men, for Christ's sake." The slur hung in the smoky air. The jazz kept playing. Capone snapped his fingers once. The lights went out. What nobody knew, what the newspapers would never report, was that this Christmas party had been 18 months in the planning. And what happened in the next 60 seconds wouldn't just settle an old score. It would change who controlled New York forever. To understand what happened in those 60 seconds of darkness, you need to understand who Al Capone was in December 1925. He wasn't just another Chicago gangster. By December 1925, Al Capone was the 26-year-old king of the Chicago outfit, running an estimated $100 million criminal empire that stretched from bootlegging to gambling to prostitution. He controlled Cicero, Illinois completely. Politicians answered his phone calls. Police looked the other way. Judges took his money. But Brooklyn was where it all started, and where it almost ended. Alphonse Gabriel Capone was born January 17th, 1899, in Brooklyn, to Italian immigrants Gabriele and Teresa Capone. The family scraped by. Gabriele cut hair. Teresa sewed. Young Al showed promise until he was 14 and punched a female teacher in the face. Expelled. Done with school forever. He joined the 5 Points gang as a teenager, working under Frankie Yale at the Harvard Inn on Coney Island. That's where Capone got his famous scars. 3 knife slashes across his left cheek, courtesy of Frank Galluccio after Capone insulted Galluccio's sister. The wounds gave him the nickname he hated, Scarface. In 1918, Capone married May Coughlin, an Irish Catholic girl from Brooklyn, pregnant with their son Albert Francis, who they called Sonny. Capone was working as a bouncer, learning the business, rising fast. Then the Irish White Hand gang put him on a kill list. The White Hand was so powerful in Brooklyn, so vicious, so untouchable, that the Italian mob couldn't afford to lose one of their rising stars. So in 1919, they sent Capone west to Chicago to work for Johnny Torrio. But Capone never forgot. For 6 years, that humiliation festered. The White Hand gang had controlled the Brooklyn waterfront since the early 1900s. Irish immigrants who built their power on the docks, controlling shipping, longshoremen unions, and every illegal dollar that moved through New York Harbor. Bootlegging was bigger money than anyone imagined, and whoever controlled the waterfront controlled everything. Their leader until 1923 was Wild Bill Lovett, a decorated World War I veteran turned killer. When Lovett was murdered in late 1923, his brother-in-law took over, Richard Joseph Lonergan. They called him Pegleg because he'd lost his right leg in a trolley car accident as a child. Lonergan was 25 years old and suspected in more than 20 murders. None convicted. He was a braggart, a bully, and a boozer who led violent raids through Brooklyn, beating Italian immigrants bloody for sport. His mother, Mary Brady, had been acquitted of murdering Lonergan's father in 1922 after the abusive ex-boxer punched their daughter Anna in the face. Anna Lonergan was known as the Queen of the Irish Town Docks, powerful in her own right. But even Anna couldn't control Pegleg's temper. By 1925, the White Hand was losing ground. The Italian Black Hand Gang, led by Frankie Yale, was pushing into their territory. Prohibition had raised the stakes. Blood had already been spilled on both sides. December 1925. Capone's 7-year-old son, Sonny, was dying. A severe mastoid infection was causing partial deafness and excruciating pain. May Capone was desperate. Chicago doctors couldn't fix it, but a specialist in New York could. Capone brought his family east for the surgery. Official story. Concerned father seeking medical help. Real story. Frankie Yale had called in a favor. Yale was Capone's old mentor, boss of Italian operations in Brooklyn and co-owner of the Adonis Social Club. Yale had done Capone 2 massive favors. In 1920, Yale murdered Big Jim Colosimo in Chicago at Capone's request. In 1924, Yale murdered Dean O'Banion, Capone's Irish rival on the North Side. Now Yale needed help. The White Hand Gang was threatening to take over his waterfront territory. Lonergan was getting bolder, more violent, more unpredictable. "I need you to come home, Al," Yale told him. "Time to settle old scores." Capone had the perfect cover. On December 25, 1925, Christmas Day, Capone bribed a surgeon into operating. May stayed with their recovering son at her parents' house in Brooklyn. Al told her he was going to buy Christmas tree decorations. He was actually heading to Coney Island to meet Yale. But what nobody knew, what the White Hand Gang couldn't have known, was that Al Capone and Frankie Yale had been planning this Christmas party for 18 months. Every successful trap needs bait, and Yale had the perfect bait. His name was Eddie Lynch. Lynch was a White Hand Gang member, low-level enforcer, not important enough for Lonergan to watch closely. But Lynch had a problem. He liked money more than loyalty. For 18 months, Lynch fed Yale intelligence, Lonergan's movements, his drinking patterns, his temper, his special hatred for Irish women dating Italian men. Yale paid Lynch $500 a month, worth about $7,000 today. That bought everything Yale needed to know. The plan took shape slowly, methodically. Yale hired 3 Irish girls to work at the Adonis Social Club. Waitresses, hat-check girls, entertainers. He paired them with Italian dates. Visible, prominent. Bait Lonergan couldn't ignore. Yale knew Lonergan's pattern. The man drank heavily, got violent, led his crew into confrontations when he saw something that offended him. And nothing offended Lonergan more than Irish women with Italian men. "We don't go to war in the streets," Yale told Capone over whiskey in a Coney Island backroom. "We invite them to a party." The trap Christmas night party at the Adonis Club, packed with 200 witnesses. The crew Capone brought 2 of his best Chicago hitmen, Albert Anselmi and John Scalisi, cold-blooded killers who'd murdered dozens. Yale added his Brooklyn enforcers. The Adonis Social Club was owned by John Stabile, who called himself Jack Stickham, after his favorite English phrase. Stick 'em up. The club sat at 152 20th Street, deep in South Brooklyn Italian territory, a speakeasy disguised as a social club, orange light bulbs casting warm amber glow, mirrored ball hanging from the ceiling, jazz stage, dance floor, player piano in the corner. Upstairs lived Alphonse Morelli and his family. They would later tell police they heard nothing that night. Not the music, not the screaming, not the gunshots, nothing. This was personal for Capone, but he was methodical. 18 months of planning for one night. That's patience. That's strategy. That's how you win wars. December 25th, 1925, 9 p.m. Peg Leg Lonergan kissed his wife Anna goodbye, told her he was going to buy Christmas tree decorations. She warned him, "Don't go looking for trouble on Christmas." He went anyway. Lonergan gathered his crew. Aaron Abe Harms, his best friend and right-hand man. Cornelius Needles Ferry, an addict and enforcer. James Hart. Joseph Ragtime Joe Howard. Patrick Happy Maloney. 6 men, all armed with pistols, all drinking heavily as they moved through Brooklyn's snowy streets. Then Eddie Lynch made the call, the final piece of intelligence. Al Capone's at the Adonis Club tonight. Those words did exactly what Lynch knew they would do. Lonergan exploded with rage. 6 years ago, the Italians ran Capone out of Brooklyn like a dog. Now he's back in Irish territory, acting like he owns it. This was Lonergan's chance. Kill or humiliate Capone in front of 200 witnesses. Show the Italians that Brooklyn belongs to the Irish. The White Hand Gang had been losing ground for 2 years. This was the moment to take it back. Lonergan had killed more than 20 men. Never convicted. Never even tried. He was untouchable. And he knew it. 6 Irish gangsters walking through snowy Brooklyn streets. Armed. Drunk. Angry. Walking into a trap they thought was their triumph. 11 p.m. The Adonis Club in full swing. Christmas party raging. 200 people dancing, drinking, celebrating. Jazz combo playing festive songs. The mirrored ball spinning overhead, scattering light across the crowd. Al Capone stood near the bar, playing doorman, his alibi already in place. Frankie Yale circulated through the room, greeting guests, shaking hands, playing the gracious host. The shooters were in position. Anselmi and Scalisi scattered through the crowd. Yale's enforcers stationed near exits, everyone waiting. The 3 Irish girls sat prominently with their Italian dates. The bait visible, impossible to miss. Orange lights creating shadows. Holiday cheer masking deadly intention. Capone's mind wandered. He thought about his son Sonny, recovering in the hospital, partially deaf for life from the infection. He thought about May waiting for him, trusting him, believing he'd gone to buy tree decorations. He thought about 6 years ago, running from Brooklyn like a coward. Christmas 1919, when he was nobody. Now it was Christmas 1925, and he was the king of Chicago. Midnight passed. 1 a.m. passed. 2 a.m. passed. Eddie Lynch's intel said Lonergan would come. But would he? 3:07 a.m. The double doors opened. Richard Pegleg. Lonergan stumbled in, wooden leg thumping against hardwood, fresh toothpick in his mouth, 5 armed men behind him. The trap was sprung. What happened next took 60 seconds. But those 60 seconds were 18 months in the making. Lonergan and his crew entered loud, drunk loud, dangerous loud. Witnesses would later report they were intoxicated and being unruly. But that was polite language for what everyone saw. These were men looking for violence. Lonergan spotted Italian customers at a corner table. He started shouting, ethnic slurs cutting through the music, words so vile that customers turned away in disgust. The jazz combo kept playing, "Yes, sir, that's my baby." But conversations died. People turned to look. Then the 3 Irish girls walked in with their Italian dates. Lonergan exploded. "Come back with white men, for Christ's sake." The girls fled. The room went silent. 200 people watching. The player piano near the dance floor still playing its mechanical tune. Lonergan's crew fanned out. Harms moved toward the piano area. Ferry headed toward the bar. Hart and the others stayed close to the entrance. They thought they owned this place. Lonergan and Harms sat by the player piano, demanding drinks. Ferry walked toward the bar, weaving slightly, drunk and confident. They didn't know everyone in the room was watching them. They didn't know the shooters were in position. They didn't know this was their last minute alive. Capone stood at the bar, hand inside his jacket. He caught Yale's eye across the room. Yale nodded once. Capone snapped his fingers. The signal. The lights went out. Total blackness except for dim emergency exit signs. For 3 seconds, complete silence. Just the player piano still mechanically playing. Then chaos. The first sound was metal on skull. A gun butt smashing into Needles Ferry's head as he walked toward the bar. The blow struck his head with brutal force. Then a gunshot to his chest. He dropped. Lonergan and Harms froze by the piano for half a second. Then the gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes illuminating the darkness like strobe lights. Pop, 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 pop. The jazz combo still playing in background, not stopping immediately because they didn't understand what was happening. People screaming, scrambling for exits, tables overturned, glass shattering. The player piano kept playing even as bullets slammed into the wood around it. Multiple shooters firing. Capone, Anselmi, Scalise, Yale's men, all targeting the same area, the piano, where Lonergan sat. Slugs tore through Lonergan's chest. He died with that toothpick still in his mouth. Harms took rounds execution style. Head, chest. He was dead before he hit the floor. Ferry already dying near the bar. Hart shot in the leg and thigh, crawling desperately for the exit. Howard and Maloney somehow escaped through the back, running into the snowy Brooklyn night. This wasn't wild shooting. This was precision. This was targeted execution. Lonergan was the primary target. He had to die. His lieutenants were secondary. Everyone else, avoid civilians if possible. First shot fired at 3:08 a.m. Last shot at 3:09 a.m. 60 seconds that ended a gang war. 3:15 a.m. Someone turned the lights back on. The scene was carnage. Bodies on the dance floor. Richard Pegleg, Lonergan dead. Toothpick still dangling from his lips. Aaron Harms dead near the piano. Blood spreading beneath him. A blood trail leading outside where someone had dragged Ferry's body to the gutter. 200 witnesses. But suddenly everyone had amnesia. Upstairs, Alphonse Morelli and his family would tell police they slept through everything. The bartender saw nothing. The hat-check girl heard nothing. 200 people. 0 witnesses willing to talk. Capone, Yale, Anselmi, and Scalise were already gone. Out the back, into waiting cars. Snow falling as they drove through Brooklyn streets. "Dump my gun," Capone told them. "Drop me at the hospital." Behind them, 3 dead Irish gangsters. The White Hand Gang broken forever. Capone walked into the hospital where Sonny was recovering. May looked up from her chair. "Did you get the tree decorations?" "The stores were closed. Honey, it's Christmas." He sat next to his sleeping son. Carols playing softly on the radio. Evidence still on his hands. By morning, every cop in Brooklyn was looking for Al Capone. But finding him and proving anything were 2 different things. December 26th. Morning. Police arrived at the Adonis Club to find 3 bodies. A detective from Poplar Street Station at the Brooklyn Bridge identified them. White Hand Gang members, Richard Lonergan, Aaron Harms, Cornelius Ferry, all dead. December 27th. 10 suspects arrested. Al Capone, Frankie Yale, Jack Stabile, Sylvester Agolia, Anthony Desso. Others. Capone's alibi was absurd. He told police, "I was visiting my mother for Christmas. I was working as doorman at the club as a favor." He gave an address at 377 18th Street, a few blocks from the Adonis Club. The doorman story, ridiculous. Everyone knew who Capone was by then. The 26-year-old king of Chicago, playing doorman at a Brooklyn speakeasy. Nobody believed it. But belief and proof are different things. The evidence problem was simple. 200 people in the club. 0 willing witnesses. The upstairs residents heard nothing. The bartender saw nothing. The hat-check girl remembered nothing. James Hart was found at Cumberland Street Hospital with bullet wounds in his leg and thigh. He claimed he'd been shot from a passing car while taking a stroll. Not at the club. Never at the club. Bail was set at $5,000 to $10,000 per suspect. Capone's friends showed up with cash. The magistrate initially refused to release him. December 31st. Capone was arraigned in magistrate's court on homicide charges. He spent 1 week in jail. Then the case collapsed. No witnesses equals no case. All suspects released. No one ever prosecuted for the murders. Perfect crime. Anna Lonergan made a public statement to the newspapers. You can bet it was no Irish American like ourselves who would stage a mean murder like this on Christmas Day. She blamed foreigners. Everyone knew she meant Italians. But knowing and proving are different things. With Lonergan dead, the White Hand Gang faced a leadership vacuum. Harms, his best friend and strategist, was dead. Ferry, his enforcer, was dead. The gang never recovered. Over the next 2 years, Frankie Yale systematically took over the Brooklyn waterfront. The Irish White Hand Gang was reduced to street-level thugs by 1927. Yale's power solidified. Brooklyn docks under Italian control. Bootlegging routes secured. This was the turning point in New York's gang wars. Irish gangs would never regain the Brooklyn waterfront. Italian mob dominance began here. The pattern repeated across America. Italian organized crime displacing Irish gangs during Prohibition. Capone returned to Chicago in early January 1926. The story spread through the underworld like wildfire. Capone went back to Brooklyn and settled old scores. His reputation grew, not just powerful, not just ruthless, but willing to take revenge even after 6 years. The message was clear. Al Capone never forgets. For Capone, this was personal vindication. 6 years earlier, he'd fled Brooklyn as a marked man. He returned as a conquering king. He settled the score that had haunted him. The method was brilliant. Used his son's medical emergency as perfect cover. Planned for 18 months with Yale. Executed perfectly. Drew his targets into a trap. Killed them in front of 200 witnesses. Walked away free. Blueprint for organized crime. Strategic patience. Plausible deniability. Omerta. The code of silence. Most people know Capone for the St. Valentine's Day massacre in 1929. Most people know him for Chicago. But the Adonis Club massacre was arguably more important. It proved Capone could operate anywhere. It showed his strategic mind. It eliminated an old threat. It secured New York bootlegging routes for Yale, helping Capone's liquor supply chain. The irony, Capone used his son's surgery as cover. Sonny was partially deaf for life from the infection, Capone told himself. I did it for family. But what he really did was revenge. 3 Irish gangsters died on Christmas night, 1925. Their killer walked free 7 days later. The story became legend in both Brooklyn and Chicago. If you want to know how Al Capone became the most feared gangster in American history, it didn't start with the St. Valentine's Day massacre. It started on Christmas night in a Brooklyn speakeasy, when a young man returned home to settle an old score. Capone would go on to become America's most notorious gangster. But this night, Christmas 1925, was the moment he proved he was more than just Chicago muscle. He was Brooklyn born, and Brooklyn never forgets. Remember this. In the world of organized crime, revenge isn't served hot or cold. It's served exactly when you're ready. And on Christmas night, 1925, Al Capone was ready.